Hey there, just wanted to do a follow-up video for the Canon Powershot S90. Just show some features that I neglected to mention the first time around, and just take you through more of the different things you can do with this camera. One thing too, I mentioned I was going to shoot this on a camcorder. Unfortunately, it wasn't uploading properly, so I'm shooting on my MacBook, and the lettering and all that stuff's being reversed, but you will not have to read anything, so don't worry about it. The first thing I want to show you is the flash. I'm going to turn this on right now. So there it is. As you can see, it's pretty responsive. The flash is located right here on the top corner. And the one thing about that kind of worries me is I keep my finger all the time there when I'm holding these compact cameras. So just be careful about that. You don't want to ruin the mechanism there, which causes it to pop up. So it's something I have to worry about a little bit. Next one I want to show you here is the LCD screen, and specifically I'm going to use this jog dial here to adjust the shutter speed, which I showed you last time, but pay attention to how the LCD is getting brighter or darker. And that is because obviously I'm changing the shutter speed, so in this case I am darkening the LCD because the shutter speed is becoming faster and letting less light in. The other way, I am making the shutter speed slower, therefore more light's getting through. And what I'm really trying to get across here is actually the LCD itself. It's great that you can see a preview of how your adjustments are affecting the composition of the shot. And this is really important with a fully manual camera like this, especially when you're in manual mode and you're changing not just one or two maybe different things, but maybe 3, 4, 5 things. So you're adjusting the shutter speed, but you're also adjusting the aperture and maybe changing the white balance and the ISO and all that stuff. And the LCD, unfortunately the resolution of this video isn't that great, but it's a beautiful LCD. It's a 3-inch diagonal LCD. And it's got amazing resolution, and it's really useful for getting a live preview of what your composed shot's going to be, and I've found it's very effective so far. So I've taken this out, done some low light photography with it, and I found that being able to see all the different adjustments I'm making, it's just really worthwhile to the average photographer, and it's a good addition by Canon to have that feature there. So another thing I want to show you here is the ring function, which I mentioned last time, and that again is this button that is right here. It adjusts what this ring control has control over, and basically in manual mode at least, the ring here on the front controls aperture. However, when you press this button, you'll see that there's more controls here. You have a whole host of them there that you're able to pick from. I'm just going to read them across to you. You have ISO, exposure compensation, manual focus, white balance, and zoom. So it's great that you can just press this one button here, turn this dial, and then you'll be able to change all these different features, pretty much which compromise the majority of stuff that the average photographer wants to control while they're taking a picture. So unlike a lot of cameras out there where you have to go in a menu system and dive down and try to find the right thing and make the adjustments, it's really just one button press and then turning the dial, and then just about everything you need to control you have access to. If that's not good enough for you too, like I said before, you have this function button here which calls up the additional menu. And one thing I want to highlight here is the ISO settings. It starts out as an ISO 80, which is no film grain or low film grain, excellent for daylight shots where there's a lot of light that's out there. On the for nighttime or for low light, the ISO goes all the way up to 3200, which actually I don't think it's very usable. The majority of people probably don't want to really take pictures on that setting just because it tends to be really grainy, probably more grainy than most people are able to live with. So personally, I try not to shoot anything with a higher ISO than 400. Sometimes I'll use 800 if it's especially low light, or if I'm shooting like a concert or something like that. But again, you have this great f2 lens at the wide angle of 2.28 millimeters. So that lets a lot of light in. You should be able to get away with keeping ISO under 800 for the most part. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about is the lens itself too. Again, one thing I didn't mention last time is that this is image stabilized, which is great. It's not magic. If you shake the camera a lot, it's not going to correct itself. If you also have an exposure that's longer than a second long, and you're hand holding, you're probably gonna. Most people aren't able to hold still enough for a second or longer, to make a clear shot. So image stabilization won't help you in that situation either, for the most part. If you have exposure that's shorter than a second, though, even hand holding, generally you'll get pretty decent results. And that's really where it kicks in, where it's great to have image stabilization. So anything longer than a second, you're going to still have to use, like a tripod, or, rest it on something solid, like, let's say, a table or some other flat surface, so that you have that stability. But, again, you have a little bit more leeway now, especially in low light situations where you're trying to handhold something. You want to keep it still and still get the shot off. So another thing I want to talk to you about, again, this is with the controls. The S button, I mentioned that last time. I wasn't sure what it was, and I looked it up. Great feature by Canon. Basically, it's a shortcut button is what it's called. And as the name suggests, you can program that to be a shortcut to any part of the menu or any kind of feature that you want to make adjustments to. So again, like there might be something that's buried in the menu that you change all the time, but the ring won't take care of it or whatever. You can program that button to take you straight there and handle it from there on. That's great. That's really another thoughtful inclusion by the Canon design team. So one thing I want to talk to you about too is the battery life of this camera. This camera, I believe, is rated at 220 shots per charge cycle, which it's actually not that great. There are a lot of other compact cameras, even from Canon's own ELPH line, for instance, that are rated higher, in some cases going, twice as long or even more than that. This is it's the NB6L battery for this particular camera. I just want to make sure that I note that, again, the battery life isn't that great, so, you're probably going to have to invest in another battery, or maybe even two batteries, especially if you're considering, taking this out on, let's say like a weekend trip or on vacation. If you're going to use this for a significant amount of time, you want to have an extra battery packed along with you, so that you make sure you can just change it out when you need to. Beyond that, again, like I said before, great camera, excellent build quality. I think it's a good example of really well thought out design. Good example of good industrial design. The people that made this really thought of what the average photographer wants, what the kind of controls they want, like what kind of form factor and all that stuff. And Canon, like I said before, I mean the user interface is great. It comes from the G series. You also see it on some of the other ELPH cameras too. But like I showed you before about like those the gauge kind of looking user interface, using the control dial here in the back and the front. The fact that the design team works so closely together with the user interface guys, they figured out a way to augment the design so that you have this good tactile kind of feeling, and it works perfectly with the user interface that's been created for the camera. It's just a really well-made product. It's something that it's kind of a joy to use, and I think the majority of people out there, when they get their hands on it, they're gonna see that it's actually a lot of fun to take out there and to shoot with. Quick note: this is definitely gonna sell out. This is actually, I think Amazon, they recently started selling these cameras. This is where I got this camera from, and I believe as recently as today, they've already sold out of their initial stock, so they're on back order already. So if you want this, you might want to try to get your hands on it, whenever you can. The thing about it too is I believe that you might even have better luck if you go to a big box, like a brick and mortar type store. So if you go to Best Buy, or I know there's at least one guy in Australia that's looking at this. Go to Grundig if you're in Australia. You might be able to have an easier time finding this camera, just because I think the majority of photography people are looking online. They're looking at Calumet, they're looking at BH Photo or Adorama or Amazon or whatever, and I think those stocks are going to go the fastest. They may forget that they can just walk down to the local Best Buy or local electronics store and probably pick it up pretty quickly over there. So I hope this has been useful for you. If you have any questions, just send me a note. I'm also going to put some pictures up on my blog, and I'll link to that too. This is the Canon PowerShot S90. Great camera, totally recommend it. Go out there and get one if you want to. Bye.